Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for tuning in to the Move United 2020 Fall Competition Meetings. This session is focused on table tennis. My name is Shelley Fazzini, and I'm a competition manager with Move United. For anyone who may have missed any of the sessions over the last few weeks, they are being recorded and they will be made available probably, we're hoping by the end of next week, but at the end of all of these sessions. Before I turn this over to Jennifer, I'd like to just go over a few housekeeping things. We're asking everybody to keep your mic on mute to avoid any distractions. However, we are working with a small group today, and Jennifer is comfortable with you going ahead and unmuting your mic and giving her any questions as she's going through her presentation. Go ahead and feel free to use your chat to just say hello to everybody and introduce yourself. We do have multiple sessions going on today, so we're going to be pretty strict on the time limit so that we can make sure that we have the time to prep and set up for the next session. If we happen to go through our 45 minutes and we still have items, we're recording the chat, so those will just be parking lot items, and we'll make sure that we get answers to all of those. So with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer.
Good morning, everyone. I know we're kind of all in different places. I hope everyone, the weather's cooperating. There's some fun stuff going on. I know, Pam, you've had quite the year for weather there in Louisiana, so hopefully everyone's doing okay and staying healthy in COVID. I'm Jen Lucharovich, for those of you who haven't got a chance to meet, hello. I am a medical classifier. And I do that for table tennis internationally. I also am the competition director for table tennis at Angel City Games, so I can talk to you for a little bit from both perspectives. But disclaimer, I am a very bad table tennis athlete. So if you want that perspective, I suggest you get that information from someone else. So I'm happy to be here, but would like a chance for everyone else to go around and kind of give your background and who you are here representing, so I can help make sure how to cater the discussion to what information you might need about para table tennis. So Jim, do you want to start?
Jim, I think you unmuted yourself, but we can't hear you. And I'm not sure if you know that we can't hear you.
No, I didn't know that you can't hear me, so thank you.
There we go. We hear you now.
So I'm currently on the Adaptive Sports Board as a member at large. That'll end this year. I'm on the competition committee for Move United and just generally interested parent. And so I'm sending in through all the sports sessions to hear what there is to say. And that's it.
Jennifer, you're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I just got kicked off for a quick second, but thank you for sharing, and glad that you're here. All right, so Pam, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Pam Carey, and I'm also a table tennis classifier. I'm a pretty decent table tennis player also, and I'm from Louisiana, and I'm just here to see what you have to say, Jennifer.
Perfect. Kevin, hey, how are you doing? You want to say hello to the group?
Hi, I'm Kevin Preitzer. Volunteer for the competition committee. I'm the person that helps out with setting up registration, the SAMs, helping out ATF USA with the databases, the results, and all that. And I'm mainly here to hear if there's something new that we may need to add to the new meet management system. So,
Great.
That's all.
I think we may have lost Jen again. So I think she's coming back. I'm sure she's coming back, but why don't we continue on? Mary Kales.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I am the new supervisor for Hillsborough County Adaptive Sports. I replaced Andy Chazanoff, who I now see that a lot of people knew, so it's good. So I'm just here. We actually started a table tennis program maybe 2 years ago, so we're kind of getting into it. So I'm just here for some basics on table tennis and just here to hear what they have to say about it. So that's
awesome. Well, glad to have you here.
Great, thank you.
And then Taylor, let's hear from you.
Hi, I work for a local rec department in adaptive in Salt Lake, and I direct the Beehive games and possibly interested in adding some table tennis.
Awesome. Well, we got a good representation here. So I'm happy to kind of know that background so we can make sure as you kind of go through the information today, think of this as a starting point. Hopefully it will help you kind of come up with, even if you have more specific questions, that we can talk offline. And of course, we're going to have great contact information to continue the conversations after. So I think we're ready to go ahead and share the PowerPoint there, Shelley. Perfect. So just to start off, when we think about table tennis, I think oftentimes it's a little forgotten about because it's not maybe as popular of a sport in the United States of America, but I do want to make a point that table tennis is the third largest Paralympic event at the Paralympic Summer Games. So it does have a really great opportunity for athletes. And again, what I love about it, it's a very inclusive sport. It doesn't require a lot of financial commitment on the part of the athletes to participate. So hopefully as we go through this today, you can see why adding this is a pretty easy one to do. And what we love is most of our athletes, when they are training at the higher level, are really playing at clubs against able-bodied people. So it's a chance that they get to play with family members. It's a great one to learn when you go to college because it's usually in most rec rooms. But we'll kind of go into the sport a little bit in more detail. Okay, so we have the first slide we have is just kind of the overall agenda for today. So, we kind of got our welcome and introduction. We'll go over a little bit of the rules of competition. Then we're going to quickly go over like the quick tips document, which is available for you guys that kind of gives a quick summary of the sports. I have a slide about some additional equipment that I think is real lifesavers for you guys in planning events. We'll talk a little bit about the rating system that people use outside of Move United, so kind of helping your athletes know of how to continue the sports. Then we'll talk about some general resources and then give you that important contact information. So the sport for table tennis does have a pretty extensive rule list. What we've done kind of historically at junior national competitions as well as at regional events is using kind of a more condensed rules. And we have documents such as this one that you see here. This was from junior nationals a couple years ago that I've been giving out to athletes because a lot of them have learned the sport of table tennis more as a recreational game. So sometimes the rules are a little bit unfamiliar. So again, the difference between a USA table tennis sanctioned event and international table tennis federation sanctioned events, they're much more stringent on the rules. We are trying to, at Move United, introduce this sport and kind of bridge that gap. Again, helping athletes learn the rules. So we tend to take a little bit more lenient approach, but we do want to make sure athletes are improving their intelligence about the sport and enforce these rules. So I have on the next couple of slides, just some of these kind of pointed out in larger font so you can see. I think, there we go. So one of the big things that's important for para table tennis is the service, because in a service, it's your one chance to hit the ball without disruption from the other athlete. So the service is a really important aspect of the game, but it's also one that sometimes requires medical reasons that the athletes can't do it in the legal way. So the big stars on this slide is that in order to get a service exception, meaning you don't have to place the ball in a flat palm, throw it 3 inches before you hit it, you need to actually go through medical classification to know that the service exception, which could be serving off a closed fist, serving off an elbow, or serving off the racket itself, that requires classification. So it's a very important aspect of the game, but when athletes, which is commonplace, are not classified at these regional events, we don't have a way to kind of know that they're allowed to do those service exceptions. So just an important thing I wanted to kind of point out here. The rules, otherwise, the ones that we do really enforce is the change of service. So again, after every 2 points, the service would switch between the 2 athletes. And then that changes when we get a tighter match where it's going to switch every time. Okay, next slide. Again, the point of table tennis is you want to get the ball back and forth, and you're trying to hit it in a place that the athlete can't return. And in that case, you would be awarded a point. The rules for what a game is and a match is kind of vary depending on who is your sanctioning body. What I will say at Move United, typically what we've been doing is having a match be the winner of 2 out of 3 possible games. And again, playing the first to 11 for each game. The other question I get a lot, and again, this varies a lot with the different competition directors for the sports. Oftentimes, the format of the sport itself is hard to control because we don't have people registering in advance. But what works really well is typically to have a round robin style play. So you can ensure every athlete gets an opportunity to play against different people in their relative classes. At a minimum, you kind of want to separate those competing seated from standing. If you have the ability to kind of subdivide based on the classes for competition, that's great if you have those numbers. But there are times when numbers prohibit, and sometimes you have to do standing versus seated athletes competing against each other, which is okay, but not ideal. And so typically we'll do a round robin fashion and then either do a single elimination or double elimination, again, depending on the size of your athletes for the actual competition to decide the winner. In ITTF, each athlete is competing in these playoffs divisions after round robin only within their class. And again, that changes a little bit for doubles competition because there are certain classes that can compete together. Okay, perfect. So that's kind of a quick summary of the rules. Here is the thing about sanctioning. So again, we are for Move United sanctions events, we are not held up to the same standard as USA Table Tennis or our international partner with ITTF. So USA Table Tennis, ITTF have a very long document about sanctioning rules that include proper lighting, not having things like fans, which can change the trajectory of the balls, very specific rules about the rubber on the paddles. We are not held to that standard. But what we want to do, again, is try to create a safe and competitive format for athletes to compete for the sport. So there are some recommendations that you see here. You have 3 levels of sanctioning. At level 1, the minimum that we're asking, and again, I know this is small, but we do have a full size PDF that can be available to you guys. We want to make sure that the competitions are indoor at a minimum, and we want to know that they are using tables that are kind of sanctioned tables, especially so that they have wheelchair access, at least in one of your tables. Maybe you have a dedicated table that is wheelchair accessible, so it doesn't have a bar underneath. And the requirements of the dimensions of the table, as well as the dimensions of the nets, are something that are really essential to the game. So we do want to see that we are trying to promote that aspect of the sport by keeping within those rules. The balls themselves, they are 40 millimeters in dimension, and then there are different ratings, which are different star ratings. So at a level 1 sanctioning, we do not regulate beyond just the actual size to make sure they are table tennis balls, not pickleballs, not ping pong balls, nothing of that variety. Once we get into a level 2 sanctioning, that's where we're going to kind of want to know that you actually have tables and nets that are within those regulations. We want you to ideally be having this on a either wood floor or a kind of sport court where it's that rubberized texture floor that sometimes is over cement or over a wooden floor. Basketball courts work really great for table tennis. Ideally in setup, you want to have at least 12 feet between tables. And this is especially true for our standing athletes, so that they have the space that they need to kind of get to the balls, but also to minimize the disruption of balls flying into other courts. Okay, so we know sometimes size and positioning is difficult at some of the venues, but at a level 2 and level 3, we really want to kind of see that style of play is allowed for the athletes to improve the quality of competition. The other things that we have on here, so at a level 2 and level 3, we want to have some formal way of keeping track of score, so it's not just verbal. So these flip charts work really great. Some people use scoreboards for kind of those featured matches in those semifinal and final rounds. But you do want to, again, allow transparency and making sure we're keeping up with that score in a more standardized way. At the level 2 and level 3 sanctioning, we also highly encourage that you get USA table tennis trained club umpires. So these are people that really understand the formal rules. And the great thing is they're pretty easy to find because most of the local table tennis clubs have players who have gone through this training. So it just, again, improves the quality of play. And oftentimes before competition, you might want to quickly go over the rules and make sure everyone's kind of familiar with them before you get started. Because a lot of people, again, their background in the United States is more that this is a recreational game. Okay. So again, in the different levels of sanctioning, which you will have at more detail, you can see these put out, but at the level 1, we're really just trying to not over control what you're able to do if you have limitations based on your venue. But in order to improve quality of competition, we really want to see at that level 2 and level 3 that we're kind of approaching those standards for USA table tennis. That way, our athletes who want to continue to pursue this sport have an idea of what will happen at those other competitions. Because again, this is a sport that is very formal and regimented in how they do it, and we don't want our athletes to feel, completely overwhelmed the first time they step to that next level competition. Perfect. So you can go to the next slide. So one of the best things about table tennis is that it's very inclusive. So when we look at our list of 10 eligible impairments for Paralympic sports, table tennis covers all but one. So an athlete with any eligible impairments, the exception being visual impairment. We don't have a modification for that for table tennis, but table tennis does have a separate classification for intellectual impairments. We have 5 classes that are seated athletes, including 2 classes that have all 4 limbs involvement. So it is a fantastic sport to be very inclusive for people that maybe aren't as competitive or have the opportunity in other sports. We see a lot of athletes who tried wheelchair tennis. And again, wheelchair tennis has a much more open classification system. So for people that have more impairments, it's really hard for them to be as competitive. So that's the great thing about this sport. So we have 5 classes for seated athletes, 2 classes of which have all 4 limbs involved. And then we have 5 classes for standing and 1 class for intellectual. The big note I want to say is even for athletes who maybe primarily use a wheelchair as their primary mode of transportation, they might be more successful in competing standing. So the athletes get the choice if they want to sit or stand. There is some criteria, but for those athletes that primarily use a wheelchair for just daily mobility, they can actually compete standing, and they're allowed to use assistive devices such as a forearm crutch to help with balance. So again, a great thing to be aware of as you're offering this. Athletes who haven't been classified might not know if they want to do standing or sitting. So it's a great opportunity at a regional competition to try both and see where they feel more comfortable or more successful. So again, it's a great sport. We have athletes who are in their 70s who are still competing internationally that have spinal cord injuries with quadriplegia, meaning all 4 limbs involved. So it's pretty phenomenal the length of professional career athletes can have, especially in the seated divisions. Okay. So again, on here it has some more details about the equipment that we kind of talked about. So again, how to make sure that the tables are wheelchair accessible, an example of the flip chart that you can see in the picture there, if you're not familiar with that type of scoring system, and some more information about the ideal officials and volunteers that might help make this event successful. Good. Here you can see the different age divisions. So depending on the size of your competition, you might be limited in maybe not being able to have separate categories for all of the different age divisions, but you can consider in how you provide awards, if maybe the awards are separated by gender or age group, even though they play against each other. So again, those age divisions here are pretty kind of the standard age groups that we use with the Move United. Okay, so I entered this sport not as an athlete, so I knew very little about it. And I'll tell you, there are a few things that I've learned along the way that do make life easier when you're planning. So on the far left, you see the word Jula. This is on a kind of official barrier. And so what these do, these surround the table to help keep the balls in a contained area, but also keep people from walking within kind of that field of play. So there are formal ones that you can buy. You can also make them with PVC. I have seen really cool things with rolled up cardboard, but they really do make your life easier because table tennis balls really kind of get everywhere. So it just makes everyone's life a little easier. And for athletes who have limited mobility, it's nice they don't have to go chasing across the whole court every time a ball goes free. Another thing that helps with ball retrieval are these devices you can buy for ball retrieval, especially when that ball gets stuck underneath the table and you don't want to fight to go on your belly to get out there to grab them. They have these that are available on Amazon, as well as a bunch of other places that are specifically designed, just like for regular tennis, you know, you have those different ways to pick the balls up, that you can do it without having to bend repeatedly, which just saves all of us some discomfort and makes it a much easier process. And again, the flip chart here is shown again. There's a pretty good variety, and a lot of these fold up and are really compact, so they're not too much of a nuisance as far as storage, but they really do make life easier, that everyone is aware of the score and you don't have disagreements at the end when people think that the score, when they're fighting over who the point was awarded to. Okay, so typically this is where we would talk a little bit about how to qualify, or qualifying standards for junior nationals. Currently, we do not have para table tennis on the docket for the 2021 junior national competition, so we do not have that criteria. In the past, our criteria was simply that you competed at a regional event that was sanctioned either 1 through 3 throughout the year, or if you could compete at a USA table tennis sanction event, that would be great too. But the thing I wanted to take an opportunity to talk about is how outside of Move United, so as we're going into the kind of the development of the sport, how we evaluate the athletes to see kind of where they're at and how they can enter different tournaments of play. So the rating system for table tennis is kind of similar to what you have for chess. As you play, if you win, you're awarded points. Depending on who you beat, if they were ranked higher than you, you get more points. If you place well in competitions, you get tournament points for participating and for winning. So as they move from a Move United, we do not use the rating system in Move United, but again, trying to help our athletes get ready for the next level of competition. There are events, tournaments that are offered, you know, across the United States as well as the world. There are open competitions, which means you do not have a minimum rating required to enter. And then there are invitationals, which have a specific requirement that the athlete has a rating to be able to compete in that tournament. So these are kind of our general list here of what our ratings are. So again, our beginning rater is going to be scored between 200 and 1,000. USA table tennis, especially on the para side, about 1,400 is kind of that rating that we target. So again, Move United, we're more at the grassroots level. We're trying to help athletes just be aware of rating systems and how to go about it. But know that in order to get points, they have to go through formal classification to be able to start accruing points for their class. Okay, but just wanted to mention that here because that's something important about the sport. And hopefully you guys have seen that really great show on Netflix, Queen's Gambit, which talks about chess, and you hear a little bit about rating systems. So I'll give you an excuse to binge that later. You can go to the next slide. Perfect. The great thing, we recognize that there is kind of a big separation between kind of the level of play at Move United sanctioned events and USA Table Tennis. So USA Table Tennis has created a new webpage, which has the Para Table Tennis New Player Guide. And it has great information on here, such as how to become a member of USA Table Tennis. There's a very active Facebook group where they kind of keep all the athletes updated. I don't know, I think we're like 800 some members on it. It's pretty big and pretty active. But more importantly, for all of you on this call, is there is Find a Club near you. So there is a link here that you can type in your relative area, and it can tell you where table tennis clubs are. So this could be a great resource for you to find club umpires. It could be a way that you facilitate sharing equipment. It could be a place you find volunteers. And it can also be a place that you can refer your athletes to train outside of the competitions that you might be doing just a couple of times a year. So some clubs are free, some require membership, but I will tell you most are pretty good about providing kind of a sliding scale to help our para athletes for training. There is also a great link here again for the rules at the highest level if you wanted to peruse those. There is a calendar list that includes both national and international competitions, so for athletes wanting to take the next step. And then finally, there's the USA Table Tennis Coaches List. So a lot of the coaches are USA para table tennis athletes themselves, and some are dedicated coaches, but they are spread out all over this country. They are very passionate and very happy to help with running your competition, coaching your athletes. And they've been doing a really great job of doing kind of FaceTime and Zoom coaching sessions. So for people that do not have a club maybe directly near them, they can still get some practice that way. So I just want to make sure you guys are familiar with this. And again, if you just go to navigate to this USA Para Table Tennis, if you just search that in Google, it'll take you to this page and has all these links built in. Okay, so contact information, because again, this is just the start of a conversation. So here are and all three of these wonderful ladies are on the call today. If you have questions, and hopefully you guys are familiar with them. All of their information is here. If you have specific questions from the Move United standpoint. And then on the next slide, we have the one specifically for para table tennis. So again, I'm kind of serving as that liaison between USA Table Tennis and Move United. But I want to make sure that all of you know that if you want to add the event, or if you're already having the event and you would like more support, we are happy to kind of work and help connect you with people near you to make it even more successful. We know that this is a sport people aren't as familiar with, so we want to kind of help bridge that gap. So my email and my cell phone are there for you. The other name I wanted to introduce you is Sharon. So Sharon is out in New Jersey. Her husband is a very decorated para table tennis athlete who is now retired. But she is our lead classifier. And she really works diligently to try to provide classification opportunities for your athletes. We have even been able to find funding within USA Table Tennis so that you don't have the expense of flying out classifiers to your event so you can get your athletes classified. So know that she really goes above and beyond in trying to help bridge that barrier for athletes who are interested in kind of pursuing this sport more seriously. Okay, so hopefully you guys can take a phone photo, or again, you'll have access to this to follow up. So with that, that's kind of all the information I had prepared, but I do want to open it if you have specific questions or just comments you want to share, to give you guys the floor to kind of go down those more detailed paths if they're needed. So Mary and Taylor, I know you guys said you kind of are at different roads a little bit with offering these. Do you guys already have table tennis tables? What kind of resources would be helpful to you guys as you kind of think about trying to grow your relative programs?
So I do have tables available to me. A different rec center than I'm housed at has some. And that's kind of why I was thinking about it, is because we already have that resource.
Great. The thing I have learned, the tables are, they're a little bit of a price tag, but again, they're pretty easy to find. But the things worth investing in are having paddles or rackets for the athletes to use, because most of them don't have their own. There are great kits that you can buy on Amazon that have a racket and balls and even nets with. So that's usually the thing that is worth investing. Angel City, I think we have 80, believe it or not, 80 rackets. So athletes can just come and use them for competition. when they play, and you can get a really good racket between $10 and $20. So it's just nice to have a few of those on hand so that they're not stuck and not able to play. And balls, they get destroyed pretty easily. You step on them, they're pretty fragile. So do not underestimate how many of those you will go through. But besides that, those are the only big ones. And Taylor, how about you?
Sorry, that was Taylor.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you.
It looks like Mary commented though.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just trying to move my chat up so I can read it. Perfect. So Mary says they have all the equipment, looking to get athletes classified. That's wonderful. Yeah, so we definitely love to figure out how we can help partner with that for you. Again, I think we're all in that tough time with COVID of like hoping 2021 is normal for competition, but we're also kind of looking at ways. I know USA Table Tennis, we're discussing the ability to do classifications over video. So we're kind of working with ITTF to see the legality of that and how we can make that possible. So that is for sure maybe one thing we can start thinking about, but we can definitely talk in more detail about getting classifiers out to your event.
That might be pretty amazing, Jennifer, just for all sports, all classification, to think of the future of how many more athletes they can actually see that way.
Right. The trick is, though, we have in how the rules are written for classification, we cannot do something that violates what the international governing body rules are. So nationally, we're just trying to kind of look at how we can do that to make sure that it is done in still the proper, thorough way. And maybe it's, you know, like we've talked about regional classifications or maybe a sub-level, but trying to make sure we can provide the same quality within our kind of our rules as officials. So that's the part we're just figuring out is like what we can call it, how formal we can be. And again, for some athletes, truthfully, you can do quite a bit without putting your hands on them, but there are other athletes who you just have to actually be physically present to kind of decide that.
Yeah.
But we're hopeful to find out at least some sort of kind of in between to help, because we know that's a big burden. Anyone else have questions or comments? Pam, do you want to chime in anything about table tennis?
No, I'm a little sad that it's not going to be with Move United again, but again, we just need to get our numbers up and get the interest back going. I kind of had some thoughts not too long ago about the possibility of during junior nationals of figuring out a way, and I know if anybody could do it, Jennifer, you could, of how to do it virtual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be something, you know, we had mentioned trying to do some virtual along with the junior nationals. I think that might be a good opportunity.
Yeah, you know, we did a virtual competition for pair table tennis at Angel City Games, and it went really well. We were able to we did a breakout room for standing athletes, and we had 3 coaches of different abilities. So we had good representation. Then we had a breakout room for kids and a breakout room for seated adults. So it actually turned out pretty well. We had some athletes didn't even have paddles and they were using books and plates, but they all got to learn a lot about the sport and have a good time. So, you know, we already have that programming available if we want to do that. So the coaches, I think, were all surprised. It worked pretty well. Requires a little bit of creativity, but a great way to kind of get to interact and learn more about the sport. Yeah.
We don't have any more questions. Jennifer, thank you so much for your time. And for all of you that attended, she provided some great resources. So hopefully that will get you started in the right direction. And we appreciate all of you participating today. And if there isn't anything else, we'll go ahead and end this session.
Perfect. Well, just again, don't be shy, guys. If you have questions or things that you need, we're really good at finding solutions because we're really at the grassroots level for this sport, and we want to see it because it's a great opportunity for athletes to compete. So we want to see it continue to flourish.
And we did have one comment come in from Jim. I don't know if you saw that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just for anybody who couldn't see it, he's asking about doing something at Junior Nationals during like a try-it session during lunch or evening. And so I'll just take that, Jim. And I unfortunately I have to be the bad guy in this situation, which is really not something I enjoy. But the reason we haven't had table tennis has simply been because we haven't had the numbers competitively of athletes. And so yes, try-it sessions are very popular. We did one in Minnesota. We've done it for the last few years. We weren't going to have anything in 2020, but so that's what we found is that when kids are just given the opportunity to come and try it, they love it and they want to do it. And so if we could do that every year, I think it'd be great. But what we really want for Junior Nationals is for those kids to love it and then continue doing it. So that's where we're having the disconnect. So I think it'd be good to have a conversation with everybody on this call about how do we do that, right? Like, how do we get them to go from having fun doing it one day to then going home and practicing it and maybe doing something with the sport. And that's where we're missing that connection.
Yeah, and I think, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I certainly get that. And I guess the question then is, where do you reach the 6 to 10-year-olds that might have the time to do it, that then will grow into it and become that sort of feeder event? And that is a challenge because all sport kind of faces that right now at all levels. So it was just curious.
Yeah. Well, I think, it's a really important conversation because the truth is we want Junior Nationals to be a national competition that's really highlighting what people have accomplished. And this sport, because it is kind of hard to get into, what we've invested our time more at USA Table Tennis is trying to provide more support at regional events to build that demand so that it can come back to Junior Nationals. But the truth is most people are going to regional events to either do swimming or track and field, right? Those are the two big draws. But what's great about table tennis is some athletes that might be disadvantaged in their relative sport because of their abilities might have a great opportunity at table tennis. So we want to try to give them more regional opportunities to try it to build up the demand. But the truth is USA Table Tennis events are so skill-wise above and beyond what the athletes are ready for that we need to kind of build that foundation going upward. So we just want to, I hope everyone on this call, I love that there's, the idea of growing it, but we want to try to have it even be offered more often regionally as that fun way. And then we can kind of hopefully get that skill level up so that Junior Nationals can really be a true who's the national champion caliber event.
Anything else? Any other comments? I don't see anything else in the chat. Well, thank you again. Thanks, Jennifer. And we'll look forward to hopefully seeing all of you on some additional sessions.
Perfect.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Be safe and healthy, everyone.
Thanks, Jennifer.